You never noticed it. None of us did. The most important part of football was the part we never saw. It wasn't the goal, it wasn't the tackle, it was the quiet moment before. The hesitation, the movement off screen, the shape bending just slightly out of frame. That's where everything happens. In the breath before the crowd reacts. In the half second before possibility becomes reality. We always talked about the ball. Who had it, who lost it, who chased it harder. But the ball was only ever a witness. The real story lived in what surrounded it. The emptiness between, the pressure that bent it, the silence before movement. That's where football begins. In the pause, in the breath before inevitability. And that's what we study. Every unseen breath, every pattern beneath the noise. If you want to see the game the way we do, you'll find us inside the Gamebreaker analysis channel, where we break down the geometry behind the emotion. Because seeing space differently changes how you see everything. We learn to see players as dots. Then, we learn to see lines. Now, we see gravity. Each body pulls the pitch around it, a living constellation of fear and intent. A center back steps forward, and the field trembles. A winger hesitates, and space collapses like lungs. Every decision reshapes the world for a heartbeat. When we watch through data, we no longer see motion, we see mass. Beneath the grass, a map of forces unfolds. Zones expanding, defenders bypassed, pressure lines packed. Gamebreaker calls it the language of displacement. We call it football's hidden physics. There was a time when we thought genius meant chaos. Cruyff taught us it meant geometry. He drew triangles in the dust of Amsterdam and turned freedom into structure. He told us, if you control the space, the ball will find you. And suddenly the pitch wasn't just grass and lines. It was a living equation. 11 minds solving for inevitability. Guardiola inherited that equation and multiplied it by tempo. Each pass, a calibration. Each movement, a question. Where does order end and risk begin? You could feel it. A hum beneath the tiki-taka, like a machine calculating futures faster than we could breathe. Then came Klopp, who didn't wait for space to open. He tore it open. He believed in compression, in the violence of pressure and the beauty of recovery. Where Guardiola waited for the pattern, Klopp punched through it. Different philosophies. Same obsession. How to bend inevitability to your will. Now we can measure that obsession. Not by goals, not by shots, but by what disappears. Bypass defenders. The ghosts a pass leaves behind. Dribbles packed. The bodies deleted by courage. Possession threat, PXT. The moment pressure becomes prophecy. Each number is a trace of control. Each movement, a small act of creation. The data doesn't replace intuition. It reveals its architecture. When a player deletes 3 defenders with a turn, that isn't flair. That's geometric violence. A calculated rupture in the shape of things. When a possession climbs the threat curve, you can feel time itself lean forward. The crowd doesn't know why they're rising, but the future has already begun to happen. Space isn't infinite. It breathes, then dies. Every press steals oxygen from it. Every pass resuscitates it. The great ones operate in that suffocation. Half a body's width, 1 frame of time, that's all they need. Silva receiving between the lines. Busquets turning against gravity. Modric drifting sideways until the universe gives him permission. You remember those moments because they looked inevitable. But inevitability is crafted, not born. We began to study the moment before the moment. 8 seconds before a shot, the shape breaks. Someone moves when they shouldn't. A defender bites on a feint. The chain begins. By the time the strike arrives, the story is already written. XG will measure the ending. But the spark, that first fracture in geometry, that's what Gamebreaker lives to find. Sometimes we wonder why this all feels so human. Because space is not just physics, it's psychology. Fear expands it. Confidence compresses it. Anticipation bends it. Control freezes it. We create the same patterns in our lives, closing off when threatened, stretching when we trust, seeking control in the chaos. Football only mirrors what we are. In Spain, we learned patience. In England, we learned velocity. In Germany, we learned violence disguised as rhythm. Each culture wrote its own geometry. Each era built a new religion of space. But underneath the accents and colors, the same forces moved. Possession folding into pressure, pressure collapsing into inevitability. Now, the data lets us see that cycle breathe. Not as chance, but as pattern. And pattern, we've learned, is prophecy. We once measured football by what was visible. Goals, assists, clean sheets. But the game was never in the numbers we counted. It was in the ones we couldn't. The invisible distance a defender shifts before a pass is played. The half-meter gap a midfielder opens by pretending he's not involved. The timing of hesitation. That's where the edge lives. Not in what happens, but in what almost does. When we model possession, we model probability. But when we model space, we model faith. Every pass is a gamble on trust. Every press is a test of belief. Data doesn't remove emotion, it translates it. That's why numbers can feel like poetry. Because beneath their logic lies our longing for control. You remember the matches. Iniesta in the 116th. Alexander-Arnold's corner that shouldn't have been. Moments when space folded faster than anyone expected. Those weren't miracles, they were equations solved at human speed. And if you slow them down, trace the defender's bypassed, the build-up threat rising frame by frame, you can read them like sheet music. Football's score written in invisible ink. And Gamebreaker reads the ink. We used to think prediction killed wonder, but prediction only deepens it. Because when you understand why something happens, you see how delicate it really is. The beauty isn't in surprise, it's an inevitability well earned. The sense that all roads, all passes, we're always leading here. And when the ball hits the net, we don't just cheer for outcome, we cheer for order emerging from chaos. Now, we watch differently. We don't follow the ball, we follow its gravity. We see the field flex and breathe. We know which spaces are alive and which are already gone. And somewhere deep in that knowledge, the game becomes something purer. A language of movement and anticipation. A map of human intent. Every era refines the model. Every match writes another equation. But the feeling remains unchanged. The crowd holds its breath. The pass leaves the foot. Defenders shift too late, and for a heartbeat, the pitch is perfect, balanced between chaos and control, between data and desire. That's the moment we chase, the moment we build models to understand, knowing we never truly will. Because football isn't about possession, it's about possibility, and possibility lives in space. The science of space isn't cold, it's human. It's hope measured in meters. It's time measured in touches. And somewhere in those invisible calculations, we find ourselves. Our fear, our precision, our need to make sense of motion. So we keep watching. We keep measuring. We keep listening to the pitch breathe. Not to predict the future, but to understand why it had to happen. The ball rolls, the crowd rises, and for a fleeting second, space becomes destiny. If you want to learn to see the game that way, to read the silence between passes, join us inside the Gamebreaker analysis channel. We study the invisible. We live in the space between moments. That is the science of space.